right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Forgot last meeting, sorry about that. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local channel Access 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. So we'll start with Select Board Public Information. Jerry?
Yeah, I wanted to just take the time to congratulate the Nauset High School hockey team with their
Man.
undefeated one-tie state championship. So congratulations to them. But I also wanted to say congratulations to all the student athletes at Nauset High School, whether it's winter, fall, or spring sports. I had the pleasure of going to a girls' basketball game, and they only won one game. And yet you sat there and you watched them as a team, encouraging each other, trying all the, it was just wonderful. It's not only just the champions, but all of you, but a special call out to the state champ hockey team.
Yeah, no, it was great. I watched the first two periods at local break.
1-1.
But then they
1-0.
were losing 1-0 when I left, and I was pleasantly surprised this morning when I woke up, and
Yeah.
they pulled it off, so I should have stuck around. But it was running like an hour and a half behind,
It was a bit,
so
yeah.
past my bedtime. Suzanne, you have something?
So I was sent this at work, but the Barnstable County has launched a public health website for preventing measles on Cape Cod in the event that measles concerns you. And they noted that there are currently no reported cases of measles in Massachusetts for 2025, and that for 2024, there were no cases of measles on the Cape or the islands. And they also have a little graphic about if you should check your vaccination status, or like where your vaccination status might be depending on how old you are. And it broke it down into like chunks. So in case anyone's interested, the county has a resource for you.
Thank you. Jamie, do you have anything? I have announced a couple things. First ever Lower Cape Pride will be happening this June in Orleans, mostly in Orleans. Grassroots group of people from Orleans and surrounding towns. It'll be June 13th, 14th, and 15th, roughly. They'll have some gatherings Friday in the evening at the Orleans Council on Aging, a social event at the bowling alley, and then a parade on Saturday the 15th, some afternoon of programming at Cape Rep in Brewster, and there's a lot more happening, but you can find out information at lowercapepride.org if anyone's interested in helping out or volunteering or being involved. And then also vessel storage lottery is tomorrow, so tune in. I believe it's at 10.
Usually it's
Yeah,
around.
around 10. I reached out to Scott, but I hadn't heard exact time, so sometime tomorrow morning, but tune in. We usually get a few people tuning in, believe it or not, even though it's a rather dry event. So we'll do public information from the public. Rich said a couple people were putting up their hands.
Yeah, we've got Jeff Benjamin, I'll promote to talk.
Okay, if you could please, we're going to limit this to 2 minutes because we have a lot on our agenda tonight. If you could state your name, your address, and if you have a, seasonal home here, your primary address.
Yes, so this is Jeff Benjamin, and I spoke on February 24th. I'll try and keep it brief, but I appreciate the time today. At the
Could you state your address and your primary
Oh,
residence,
yes,
Jeff,
yes.
please?
My Eastham address is 220 Ireland Way.
And that's your primary residence?
No, I'm a part-time resident, although we've been there for decades. No, my permanent residence is Nyack, New York, 15 Hart Place, Nyack, New York.
Thank you.
Most welcome. So at the March 3rd Select Board meeting, Select Board member Suzanne Bryan took issue with the view that I expressed on February 24th, as have others, that requiring all non-voting property owners to pay for a tax deduction given to all voting property owners was in fact taxation without representation. Ms. Bryan stated that position was wrong because people who have their permanent residence elsewhere should only be able to vote, or typically only vote in the one place. And I just want to make two brief points. First, my objection was not driven because I want the right to vote in Eastham, although some communities in the United States do give part-time residents the right to vote on local matters. What my wife and I object to is imposing an added tax on all part-time residents who can't vote to subsidize a tax reduction for all full-time property owners who can vote. In effect, tax us more because we can't vote. Second point is that implicit in Ms. Bryan's statement is that all part-time residents are per se wealthy. And as personally evidenced by a different speaker at that February 24th meeting, this is not true. Some, in fact, are financially challenged and rely heavily on Social Security. And I think at least two of the speakers at that meeting said that their only home, the only home they owned, was in Eastham. Also, as you all know, some full-time resident property owners are wealthy, and I think you've all acknowledged that. Yet they would receive tax deductions under the RTE that we part-time owners would have to pay for. So what I ask simply is, rather than take a hostile us against them approach, where the them do much to support the town of Eastham, how about a fair solution that would unite us and that would let the part-time residents know that the select board does appreciate all they do and will continue to do for Eastham, including, if additional funds are required, paying more in taxes to assist those truly in need.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
So I do want to thank you for your time, and your service.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did
We have
one other?
Judy, who I'll promote to talk.
Okay. Judy, if you could state your name, your residence, and your primary residence, please.
Okay, my name's Judy McMullen, 50 Lighthouse Lane in Eastham, and I live also in Westborough, Massachusetts. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. So first of all, I support finding ways to help homeowners who really need housing assistance, but I do protest using the residential tax exemption as a solution. I'm 76 years old. I'm on a fixed income. I'm a recent widow, and I've lived in Eastham for 38 years. I have a small condo off Cape to be near my children in medical care, and I'm hoping that going forward I can afford to keep the house in Eastham. I do not have money rolling in. I have friends and neighbors who are full-time residents who can well afford to pay their own taxes in full. Many have bigger houses worth way more than mine. So I don't understand why some members of the select board think it's okay to make me pay part of their taxes simply because they live in town full time. I'm frugal and I live on a budget. In one of the letters that I sent the board, I had recommended sending out quarterly tax bills. Several towns in the Cape currently do this. Personally, I would love to see this because it spreads out the payments and it would help with my own budgeting and ease some of the financial pain when that bill arrives twice a year. I don't mind paying my fair share of property taxes, but expecting me to subsidize the taxes for 99% of the full-time owners makes me feel like I'm being treated like a personal ATM. And that's how I feel.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Judy. Anyone in the audience? Please step up to the mic and, state your
Either one.
name and address, either one.
Just make sure the green light's on.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Robin Hebretzi. I live at 60 Knoll Street in Eastham.
Welcome. We saw your letter a couple weeks ago.
Yes. So I am here today to request that you make Eastham a sanctuary for the transgender and gender diverse community. Worcester was the first to declare itself a sanctuary city and a place of safety for transgender and gender diverse people. Cambridge and Boston have done so, but I have been surprised more towns have not followed suit. As of right now, the trans community is being denied health care, proper identification that reflects our identity, and safety while our federal government criminalizes who we are. People are being arrested from bathrooms and prevented from leaving or entering our country because of their appearance as someone who does not comply with an outdated standard and expectation of gender expression. Children are receiving the message loud and clear that if they are queer, they are undeserving of our love and protection. This is hatred marked by willfully misunderstanding and prejudice. We have been labeled crazy and harmful at best, demonized and criminalized at worst. We are even being erased and told we do not exist. I know firsthand that Eastham is a very gender diverse place. One of the reasons I moved here was because of the acceptance and safety our little town offers all of us. We have always felt that our town government cares for every person who calls Eastham home and does its best to provide for our needs. We must remember that, as Janetta Sagan said, silence in the face of injustice is complicity with the oppressor. As the current presidential administration gains power and tests what they are able to get away with in criminalizing and stigmatizing immigrants, believers in science, and transgender people, I fear what the future will bring for people like myself. Hostility, discrimination, and violence against anyone challenging the cultural belief in a gender binary is happening all over our country. I am terrified for what could happen to anyone who is trans, and that includes here, in my own home, because of the silence on the issue. Were the Select Board to make Eastham a sanctuary for gender diversity, fear for the well-being of myself and my neighbors would subside at the very least. We would be an example for more towns and cities, even small ones, to protect the freedom of all their citizens to live as themselves. Anne Frank wrote, "Look at how a single candle can both defy and define the darkness. Eastham could be that candle here on the Cape."
Thank you. We'll definitely take that under advisement. Thank you. All
Have a,
right, we have some more now?
Yeah, we have 3 more. Next is Joanna, and I'll promote her to talk.
Yes, hi, if you could state your name, your address, and your primary residence, please? And we're limiting discussion to 2 minutes today.
Understood. My name's Johanna Skilling. My husband, John Ciangoli, and I have a property at 15 Patrician Lane in Eastham. We're part-time residents. Our legal full-time residence is in New York. And along with Mr. Benjamin and Judy, I wanted to suggest that we're more than happy to pay our fair share of taxes, but I agree with everything they said. And funnily enough, I'd like to pick up on the wonderful remarks by the person that just spoke about inclusivity. And I don't mean to suggest part-time residents are in the same boat as others, but we love Eastham and we love being a part of the community, volunteering, shopping, eating out at restaurants. And this decision to tax part-time residents feels very othering, and it feels very contrary to the welcome and the community we found in Eastham. We're actually there 6 to 7 months a year. We're there much longer than we are in our legal property. And it feels like a punishment, and it feels like a division of a community instead of creating community. I echo the thoughts of both Mr. Benjamin and Judy that says, let's do an extra tax based on wealth. Let's do an extra tax based on real estate value, if that's the case. There are certainly full-time homeowners in Eastham who have valuable properties, who do well, who have second homes elsewhere. So I would urge the Select Board, with all the things you have to think about, to please consider creating one community of people who are working together to create good solutions, and not just, in the words of Judy, treating part-time residents like a piggy bank. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
There's someone listed as iPhone with a number of 9419638. I'll promote you to talk. And if you could please state your name and address and residence.
Hello, my name is Tom Chamberlain. I live in Canton, Massachusetts. I have a property on South Sunken Meadow Road. It's a family property. My family purchased it in 1965, so we have a lot of history in Eastham. And just like a lot of other people with a family property, we had a dilemma of whether or not we're going to keep it, whether we could afford it. And just like many others, they have to consider mortgages. We have to count our pennies in order to budget. So what I would point out to you, in a democracy, all citizens contribute to the common good equally. That's the thought process, I think, in any civics class. And RTE is at cross purposes with that thought. RTE exempts an entire group by increasing an expense for another entire group. Now, certainly in most towns, there are exemptions that are allowed. I know in my town in Canton, if you're over 65 and meet certain income requirements, you get some sort of tax exemption or break. Likewise, if you're a surviving spouse 70 years and older, you get some sort of tax break or exemption. Likewise, I know disabled vets have the same situation, but in every situation, they have to show the need before they're allowed that exemption. It's an application process. So those RTE is implemented should have certain specific parameters. Those who don't have any adverse economic situations should not receive a tax benefit. And it should target persons who demonstrate a specific hardship. So I would urge the select board to consider that and have something specifically molded for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rich, just clarification, I don't believe veterans' tax exemptions are income qualifying.
No.
No,
Disability qualified.
right. All right,
And
next.
we have one more at the moment, iPhone 8. If you could, I'll promote you to talk, please state your name and address and residence.
Still muted.
Yeah, you're still muted. I don't know if you. All right, we'll give you a few more seconds here, otherwise. Oh,
Okay,
there you go.
how are we now?
There we go.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, for some reason, I couldn't connect on the computer, but I am on the phone. My name is Jerry Bailey, and I live at 79 Wesson Terrace in Northborough, Mass. The part-time property that I'm referring to is 345 Nauset Light Beach Road. The property that I am part owner of has been in our family for over 60 years. It was built by my father and friends. This house was never constructed to be a year-round home, and it's never been one. I'm not joining the select board meeting today to say that it is unfair that I'm not a voter in Eastham. I'm a registered voter in my primary residence of Northborough, Mass. However, I do believe that it is unfair that this board is seriously considering changing the tax formula to increase the tax percentage on part-time residents and lessen that on permanent residents. How does it make sense for property owners to utilize town services, for property owners who utilize town services less than half the year, pay more tax than a similarly appraised home that is being serviced the entire year? Makes no sense. I have gotten the sense from some board members that some board members believe that anyone who owns or has partial ownership in a second home is wealthy. This was noted by previous speakers. That is incorrect. Apparently, they believe, therefore, that it is fair and equitable for them to pay additional tax because no permanent resident can afford the percentage of assessment on their property. I look forward to your responses to these comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have one more online.
I'm going to promote Ty Minich to talk.
He's muted at the moment. There he goes.
Are we okay?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Ty Minnick. My family and I have been calling Eastham home for over 40 years. Permanent residence is New Jersey, part-time resident at 45 Hideaway Lane in Eastham. I agree with the other speakers in that we as part-timers understood for years that we were paying property taxes on an assessed value of our property equal to what permanent residents were paying. But in looking at that, we were actually paying a greater portion because our needs for the services that property taxes provide are certainly minimal compared to a permanent residence. So in, in effect, I look at it and say, we haven't been paying our fair share of the tax burden. In fact, if I spend 10 weeks a year on the Cape, I support all of the local businesses, the restaurants, et cetera. And that's a critical aspect. We truly, as part-timers, are the lifeline financially to all of those businesses. And without us, quite frankly, you lose your infrastructure. You lose what we've all appreciated for many, many years being part-time residents. The fact that the RTE is revenue neutral and does nothing to support any of your other key initiatives, including affordable housing, education, improvement in the infrastructure. It's simply a solution in your mind to take a tax burden and put a greater tax burden on the part-time residents and shift it to some people that are in need, but this isn't needs-based. This is all in. You, in essence, have a revenue neutral solution that doesn't work. It's not a solution.
I'm going to go ahead and stop you there, Tom, or Ty. We're limiting this to 2 minutes today, okay? So we have a lot to get to. So thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, we'll move on to the agenda.
Amy, I'd like to make one comment.
Sure, Jamie.
Thank you. I just want to make some clarification, just because I'm appalled at the notion that someone would try and draw a connection between part-time residents and our trans community and use that as an opportunity. It's totally unacceptable. You know, we're existing in an area where decency is tentative, and I just ask that people not make it worse with comments like that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, we have a poll hearing. Jerry, I gave you the
Yeah.
large print,
Large
extremely
print,
large
extremely
print.
large
I think
print.
she printed that for me.
Public hearing. A public hearing will be held on Monday, March 17th, 2025 at 5:30 PM in the Ural Mountain Meeting Room at the Eastham Town Hall, 2500 State Highway, and by remote participation regarding Apex Companies LLC request for the town's water project contractors to install a new utility pole along with all sustaining and protecting accoutrements within the public right-of-way on the intersection of Southeast Street and South Eastham Street. The purpose of this installation is to support the development of a water meter reading device.
All right, thank you. So we have public hearing open. We have Jackie Tupper, I believe, on the line here to present.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, if we have any questions, basically it's a pole, telephone pole with an antenna on top and a receiving device that will collect water meter data for the southern half of Eastham. Is that it in a nutshell?
Yeah, hi everyone, exactly. Kind of the last part of the water project, we are upgrading the metering system so it's automatic. And we have 3 of these in town, so we put the other 2 at the water storage tanks because we need the elevation. And this location was just because we wanted to collect all the water meters in the southern part of town. So it needs to be around 50 feet high.
All right.
Yes, one question. So this will allow for it to be automatically read the water meters and people, so we don't have someone go around, drive around to pick it up? Is that what this will do?
Exactly. Our original technology was from 2015, and someone from the water department drives around and picks them up quarterly for billing. But with this new system, it reads every 3 hours, and it's a radio read from the meter to that collector. And then the collector has a SIM card in it, so it just uses cell service to bring it to the computer at the DPW. And one of the main benefits is that it picks up all of the alarms instantaneously. And then as part of our new customer portal and program, The DPW can be alerted if somebody has a huge leak or a burst pipe or a temperature alarm. So we get all of that functionality in addition to just the billing reads.
Besides saving someone having to drive around Eastham every quarter. Thanks.
I think that'd be kind of a nice job, though.
It was
In retirement, you know, you could just drive around town, hit all the
It didn't really
streets.
take that long. It was-
Because you
It
didn't
didn't
have to
take that
go
long.
every
You've
street,
done it,
right?
haven't
You had
you?
to be
I mean, the
fairly-
2015 technology wasn't bad.
You're
Okay,
right.
this is just better.
Got it. All right, so anyone else have any questions?
It's in our right of way?
Well, it's on a pole.
Well,
It's just added.
No,
Where's
you have
the
to add the
pole?
pole. It's in the right of way.
Oh, it
It's
is.
what
in
it
our,
says.
right,
Yes.
and do you have to do much clearing for it to go up? We're hoping not to. That's kind of the goal. I'm just,
I'm just trying to see if there were residences right near it, or.
well, I'm just wondering, because it says the Eastham Conservation Foundation, and I feel like they are likely to.
But it's not within their
I know.
bounds. Okay.
Well, that's one why I asked. And then two, asked about if there was going to be any clearing in the event that
If it is,
we
it's
get phone
temporary,
calls or
you know,
something.
like
Around, yeah.
full size clear.
Going in.
I know, you know how,
Pictures are huge.
yeah, when you start,
Cutting down trees, folks get
and it
nervous.
looks,
Jackie,
yeah.
watch for the big trees. Just take down little trees.
We would just try to probably some branches I'm envisioning, because I think that conservation property that you're mentioning, because we're not installing it in front of someone's house. It's kind of near the intersection, I think near the woods. And there was a large enough right of way, that's why we chose it, the way kind of the road's oriented. So we had a good shoulder to work from and existing utility poles. So I'm only envisioning probably trimming some branches on the top. Okay,
Okay, great.
wonderful. Perfect, thanks.
All right, so public hearing. Do we have anyone here in the audience that has any questions or would like to speak? Fred?
Fred, is this near his house? Is this near your house, Fred?
I don't think so.
Southeast End?
I didn't come for this.
Oh,
I'm here. So Jackie, are they gonna raise the wires that are hanging down on the road there? I'm quite familiar with that pole. It's been sitting there for 3 months.
Right, yeah, we've been planning ahead of time. We didn't want any shortages on material. So the idea is we wouldn't interfere with anything that was there already. That's why we were originally proposing it. Maybe we could reuse an existing pole, but it was better to have our separate one. And then we'll just have to tie in to some of the existing wires to get power to the unit.
Right, but the wires that go from one side over to the conservation area that you just brought up are probably no more than 15 feet off the road.
I can see that. We have a
we
picture
have
of
a
someone
picture
standing in the
right here.
road, and yeah,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
definitely
So
about 3
are they
times the
gonna-
height.
My question is, are they gonna raise the wires up so that they're not a hazard anymore?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be touching those wires
But we can
as part
ask
of this. But we can ask
Eversource to.
Eversource to.
There's a pole across the street that
Yeah.
should be replaced anyway.
Wes is standing under it in the photo.
Oh, is it Wes?
Yeah, I think so.
Jackie, can we put in a request for Eversource to tighten up those wires?
That's definitely his spirit.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
All right, there's no one else, no hands. We'll close the public hearing. Any more discussion by the board? All right, we need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the Southeast Street and Southeast Ham Street Apex Company's pole device,
Pole installation.
pole installation, because it's the installation and the device.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, next we have proposed zoning amendments. Paul Lagg. Is he hiding behind the podium?
is.
He is.
Exciting.
I didn't see him in here before.
Mary's here too.
I saw Mary walk in.
You're like
Welcome, Paul.
Oh, Mary, I didn't even see
strategically
Mary.
placed behind there, so we didn't know.
What-
Good afternoon, Paul Lagg, Community Development Director. Just want to give the board a summary of the proposed zoning amendments. There will be 2 zoning articles on the warrant this year. The first one is for the proposed amendments to the Eastham Corridor Special District. This is the zoning that comprises our main commercial districts in North Eastham. And I know we had the joint workshop back in January with the Planning and Zoning Board, so at that session, we went through everything in great detail, and you have all of the material, so I'm just going to give a basic overview and then happy to answer any questions or any detail from there. But just as a quick reminder, the backstory here is that the current zoning was adopted in 2017 under a special, under the aegis of the Cape Cod Commission through a special legislation called the District of Critical Planning Concern. The zoning has served us well, but it has some shortcomings, and most notably, it predates a lot of the planning work we've been doing over the past several years. So it predates our strategic plan, it predates our updated housing plan, our wastewater planning. It predates the purchase of the Tea Time and Town Center Plaza property. So in a lot of cases, and I should mention, working with the zoning task force, we have identified that the zoning is not in alignment with a lot of the planning that we've done and the recommendations. So we want to make sure that in order to achieve the goals that we're outlining for all of these other efforts, the zoning's there for the framework for all this. So the goal generally, as you know, is really to create more of a traditional New England village center in this area over time as things get redeveloped, but really spearheaded through what we can do at Tea Time and Town Center, the town-owned properties. That's really going to lead the way when we move to the next phase of those. So again, we want to make sure the zoning supports all of that. The basic tool that we're proposing to accomplish this is called form-based code. And form-based code is a zoning tool that really focuses on the built environment, how the buildings look, how the sites are designed, where the parking's situated, landscaping, so forth. And so that, and you've heard me describe it, it's really like a recipe. It's a cookbook. So we bake these things into the zoning, the specifics about building height, building size, materials, so forth. And the theory is that that will make it easier for development, a more streamlined, predictable development pattern and regulatory process. So basically, a property owner, developer, you follow the recipe. The town of Eastham and the zoning code is telling you how we want things to look in general. That streamlines things. But more importantly, for the town, it's a more predictable development pattern so that we can know that we're going to get closer to that goal of a traditional village center, which we don't have along Route 6. So just a few things specifically. The majority of the regulations are going to remain in place. We're not starting from scratch. Like I said, we have a good foundation. Really the goal is to add this form-based code language to clarify certain sections, to augment the language, to strengthen certain things, add clarity where there's some ambiguity. Almost everything we're putting in here came from model bylaws developed by the Cape Cod Commission, and so these things have been vetted and kind of tested at the regional level, and so they're best practices, and we're trying to follow suit with that. I mentioned form-based code focuses mostly on the built environment, but we are taking the opportunity to streamline the land use table, what you can and can't do in certain districts. And the most important thing to note in that is that we are adding in specifics for what you can do for multifamily housing. Again, in order to get this traditional New England village center where people are living and working and shopping, that really only works if the living part, if you can have a place to live in this so that you can walk out of your door, walk down the street, go to the restaurant, so forth. So ADUs, duplexes, multifamily buildings proposed to be allowed by right. And again, this is tempered with the fact that the form-based code works to make sure that in some cases these larger buildings, these buildings have more density in units. The guardrails are that it's going to look appropriate to Eastham with materials and building size and roof pitch and dormers and so forth. So that's the balance with the form-based code. So all of these, what we call missing middle housing.
Jeez.
Wow, that's
Time for church.
I know.
spectacular. I'm going to make sure my phone's off now. Yep.
Well, the bells have rung, the time has come for the zoning amendments to be passed. Also.
The rubber ducky came
Yes.
down in Groucho Marx, yeah. Sorry, everyone. I thought I had it on silence, but I guess not.
So anyway,
Sign of the
again, a couple of
times.
highlights. So in order to achieve these, the types of housing that we want to see and encourage, a couple of tools we're implementing. Building height bonuses beyond the 30-foot limit, but only for buildings that are going to have year-round rentals, seasonal workforce units, or deed-restricted affordable. So the types of housing that we need and want to encourage get the bonuses. And again, this is to make development more viable for folks. Again, I mentioned more specifics on the design standards, all part of the recipe, and we want this bylaw to be more clear and consistent and easier to work with for both property owners, developers, business owners, and for the boards that have to administer this, so that, again, there's predictability and clarity in the bylaw. And not most importantly, but very importantly, the zoning puts forth options for connector roads. So this is an important part as it relates back to why the DCPC was created in the first place, was to help issues with the traffic issues, reduce traffic and improve safety on Route 6. So where the zoning allows for the creation in the future for these connector roads, so for instance, connecting Brackett to Tea-Time, connecting the end of Holmes Road back out to Route 6, if we can facilitate these public-private partnerships across these properties and get these connector roads, that starts to make the whole area more cohesive, takes the pressure off of Route 6. So as these properties get developed and housing gets added and some mixed use gets added, we're not putting all the pressure on Route 6. So people, in theory, you could get in, excuse me, get in and around the village center without necessarily having to go on Route 6 every single time. And obviously that opens up opportunities for pedestrian and bikeway connections. So that's an important part of the whole goal of the district and getting the village center, and we want to make sure the zoning allows for that and predicts that. Again, so predictability over time and opening up opportunities. So those are just a few of the highlights. I will note, so some of the steps we have to go through are a little different than our normal zoning because the Cape Cod Commission gets involved, and they basically have to sign off on this. So and they require a few more steps. So we have presented these proposals to the Board of Health, to the Conservation Commission. We had our joint workshop with the regulatory boards. We hosted a public information session on February 26th, which we had good turnout, over 50 people came. We made presentation to the Part-Time Resident Taxpayers Association. And we had our Cape Cod Commission hearing on February 27th, and I'm pleased to announce that the proposals were all unanimously approved and with a lot of positive feedback and a lot of the reps from other towns saying we should be doing what Eastham's doing, so we can all pat ourselves on the back for that.
That's great.
So all of those steps are completed, and the next step is to have the local planning board public hearing, which will be March 19th here in the Earl Mountain Room. And barring any unforeseen changes, we'll proceed to town meeting, and basically what's in the warrant is the latest update.
Okay.
And aside from some minor adjustments here and there, it basically reflects what we went through at the joint workshop. So that's the recap of the ECSD. The other zoning article deals with the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU bylaw. This is needed because of changes at the state level. So as you know, the Affordable Homes Act was enacted and went into effect in February, and a number of things done there, but for our purposes here, they did make changes regulatorily to the ADU bylaw. So our local ADU bylaw has been on the books since 2019. For the most part, it complies with what the state regs are, and in some cases, we're actually ahead of the game for what the state's trying to do, so that's always nice to know. But we do need to make a few adjustments, basically to make sure we're in alignment with the state. So in the memo I provided, I gave you a chart basically summarizing the major changes, but most notably, at the state level, ADUs are now what's called a protected use. So everybody's allowed to one ADU by right. You still have to meet your septic capacity and your basic dimensional setbacks, site coverage, so forth. But if you have that, you're entitled to the ADU. So you don't have to go through a special permit process where it could be discretionary and a board could just say no based on a lot of variables. So we actually allow that by right already, with the exception of the Seashore District, which we carved out as requiring a special permit just because the seashore is unique to Eastham and the Outer Cape Towns, and it has its own site coverage limitations, but really the state, from the state's perspective, we shouldn't be doing that. So the only change on that is that they'll be allowed by right in the seashore like everywhere else in town. And really the goal from the state's perspective is to treat ADUs the same as a single-family dwelling. So wherever you, in all your residential districts, you shouldn't have to go through any special hoops or extra trials to get the ADU. So that's really where it's going. So again, our bylaw basically does most of this already. These are just some mechanical changes. We will continue to uphold the prohibition on using ADUs as short-term rentals. Our bylaw goes an extra step to say you can't do a short-term rental, but you also have to rent it year-round or live in it yourself. It doesn't mean, but you don't need to have an owner occupancy on the property, which is also good. So
I think we're the only town that has that with our
so that's kind of a
ADUs.
progressive step that we put in back in 2019. So we want to keep all of that because this makes it more usable for the majority of people. So there's some quirks that we're trying to work out with. It's the intent from the state perspective, we're in alignment, but there's some language things that we want to make sure we just don't lose that ability to have the year-round rental. So we'll keep that. As I mentioned, the ADUs will be allowed by right in all the districts. You'll still have to meet your septic capacity and your site coverage limits as they apply to any other residential dwelling in town.
We did, if I can hop in real quick, we talked about that at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting about the recent site coverage limits we did for homes. And there was some feeling that that may limit some people to put in ADUs because of that. But we're looking to get a breakout of, how many homes we have that are already covering the sites and a percentage to see if really that is prohibitive. I thought there were very few homes that already, exceeded or were close to the site coverage limits. We wanted to be ahead of it so that they wouldn't, exceed. But, we'll look at it again and make sure that there are ample homes that can put ADUs in and it isn't prohibiting because of site coverage for someone to put in a home. But that being said, they can always put one in over a garage or within the house or in a basement, that sort of thing. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah,
But
no,
that's something to
thank
look
you.
at for next year.
And, thank you for mentioning that. So there'll still be need for zoning work. We do a lot of zoning work in Eastham, and I think that's a good thing.
Right.
I think a lot of towns don't touch their zoning often enough. So we have the zoning task force. We'll continue to work through all these things. There are some other things at the state level that we didn't have time to address this year. So ADU is the first piece. We can still go back and tweak things if needed next year, but there's some other items that the state has done that we got to make sure. So, definitely there's some more zoning work to do on this and other things. So I'll leave it at that as an overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jerry?
First, an apology, Paul, on my phone, and an apology to everyone here. I am
Exciting.
sorry.
No worries.
Very sorry. Second, and I just wanted to say that I thought the memo you sent, the short memo you sent, was excellent. It kind of puts everything together. Zoning changes are complicated. I mean, it takes me a couple of days to read through and try and figure out what it is, and I thought your memo was excellent, so I appreciate that and
Thank you.
today, so that's it from me.
Suzanne?
Could have probably used the memo last night. I had a couple questions. One is that we're going to keep the year-round rental provision. However, there's some language in here that changes it to 10 months minimum, or rented for says not less than 10 consecutive months, and I was wondering, how, I mean,
That is the definition for year-round that the state uses.
okay, all
And
right, that's fine.
And really, the only reason I put it in there, well, we want to align with the state, but what we're trying to do, I won't get too much in the weeds, but the language at on the state ADUs is a little ambiguous about, it's very clear that you can prohibit short-term rentals, but then it says, other than that, towns can't put like undue regulations on.
Right,
But
okay.
if you don't have clear language that has to be year-round rental for 10 or 12 months, then it falls into, well, as long as I'm not short-term rental as it's defined by the state, then we get into this kind of like middle ground where it's like, well, okay, I can't do short-term, but I can do anything
Okay,
over 31 days. And so we want to make sure we can clearly say it has to be year-round rental. And so the 10 months is just trying to tie it back so that when the
Just
AG
the
looks
state.
at it, it's just
Sure.
trying to take out as many, that we're aligning with what the state says is year-round and just playing by their rules as much as we can, so.
and then my other question, and it probably is just the thing that hurt my brain the most, under 5.2.3, conditions and requirements. Number 12, and it mostly covers pre-existing non-conforming, and then says some other things about what, says an ADU will increase such nonconformity or create a new nonconformity. Do you know which part I'm
Right,
talking about?
yep.
Would
So-
you just explain that for us?
So I mentioned earlier, the goal is to really treat ADUs no different than a single-family dwelling, which are allowed by right. But whether it's an ADU or a single-family dwelling, those are still bound by the basic zoning dimensional requirements. So if you're pre-existing non-conforming, what that section is saying is that if you're pre-existing non-conforming, you still have to go through some regulatory process because you don't meet your setbacks or you might have a site coverage issue or something like that. So we're treating it, which would be the same as if it was just a single-family home. The threshold for ADU is a little bit lower. So normally, you're building a primary home, you go to zoning board, special permit, there's certain threshold for approval that the board has to meet, that the applicant has to meet. We are not requiring that same level, so it technically doesn't need a special permit approval. It needs basically the board to make a determination that it's not detrimental. And that's a long way of saying you need a simple majority instead of a supermajority by the planning board, zoning board. It's a lower threshold, and the board has more latitude to basically work with the applicant to get something approved. So it's really just for those issues where you're adding an ADU and you have a dimensional issue. You're too close to the lot line or something like that.
Okay, and then, so,
But
if it's pre-existing non-conforming, it doesn't require a special permit, but you are gonna need a simple majority of the
You
planning
basically
board
you
to
basically
review
go
it.
through the same process as a special permit,
Okay.
but the final vote is a lower bar than a full special permit. So
Not a
it's just a way to fit it into the regulatory framework without technically saying it's a special permit.
Okay,
Because there'll be other things going on, and it's kind of, in fairness to the surrounding area, if you're trying to put an ADU, just like you would with a house, if it's too close to the lot line or whatever issue, you would still have to go to the board and have a public hearing, and that's the opportunity to make sure that there's no detrimental issues to the neighborhood. But again, it's a little bit lower bar to meet, to make it easier to encourage the ADUs, so
thank you.
hopefully
Any-
that was
any
clear.
questions? It was more clear than the actual language, yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Mary has something.
Amy, when we did the development limits and we were calculating size of properties, at the time, there was like 5,900 and some change lots, say 6,000 lots.
Right.
There were 259, I believe that was the number, lots that had less than 500 square feet of ability to expand. So
Wow.
so we go from 6,000 to 259, and we put some leeway at the time in terms of not including basements and storage sheds, et cetera. So we try to put some flexibility, but it was about, say, about 250 properties out of the total that were constrained in that way.
Right. So that leaves 5,750
Yes,
that,
that
great.
could, potentially
Okay.
could.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mary.
That's what I was wondering, how many.
How
we
many
could-
actually
yeah.
are eligible essentially for it?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question? So, under this, or possibly our other zoning, is this one of those things that if someone had a larger house and wanted to make one single-family home into a multi-family home, maybe because they had,
They could divide.
maybe if they just like already had so many bedrooms.
Yeah,
and
they
then
could
it
put an
made-
ADU within the house,
Yeah,
definitely.
so is that,
As long as the number of bedrooms don't exceed the set.
Yes,
Right.
you can have an ADU interior or exterior or detached.
Like you could wall off
That's-
a section of the house.
yeah.
But
Yep.
that's different, because this is something for next year. That's different than splitting up a single-family home into multiple units. Like if you had a big old antique house that could be separated into apartments or into condos, whatever.
a
That's
little
not this.
different.
That's a
No, it's
different,
different,
that's a
yeah.
different piece of zoning, but you could add one accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. So if it was a single family that you wanted to make to two, but not more than-
Multiple, right.
But not multiple, it
Right,
would be,
but
okay.
it's an accessory, so it's just the difference between, if splitting it up means you got multiple primary dwellings
Oh, right,
versus
right, right.
one
Okay.
primary and then the accessory dwelling unit.
Which the size went down a little bit too. Went from
We didn't mention,
1,200 to 900.
I saw that.
That's a state.
That's a state,
Yeah.
that was a state.
I know it was the
I recall
state.
that
I-
conversation.
I'll spare you my rant on
Right,
tiny
thank you.
houses again.
All right, any other questions for them or comments?
No,
No.
these are great.
All right, thank you
This is
so
great
much,
work.
both of
Thank
you.
so much.
A
Yeah.
lot of work went into that. All right, next we have licensing.
Licensing.
Burn through those, Jer.
Yeah, I do have one question on one of them, just that, on, Caroline's. We had a thing on entertainment last year, and it went to 9 or 10 we allowed, and they wanted only to 5. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
they were-
it was right.
They're changing their entertainment.
So it was going down to 5, that was, and then and their alcohol going from midnight to 1 in the morning, is that right? I just wanted to make sure, I'm glad the entertainment one's there, because I remember we had quite a discussion last year on the entertainment.
Right, but they went to acoustic too last year as
Acoustic, yes,
opposed to
yeah.
amplified.
Where's the Oh, it might be them.
Okay. Yeah, does someone have a question on, about licensing, about Caroline's?
I'm going to promote the person listed as iPad 3 to talk.
Hi. Hey, that's Caroline's.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Just happened to be checking in on the meeting. Last year, we were 1 a.m. for a closing time and acoustic, then the same acoustic hours, 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
Yes. It was 2 years prior that we went, that we had nighttime music.
That we had two.
Last night, we just had daytime music, and same for this year.
And you guys did approve the 1 a.m.
Yeah.
close.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that the numbers were right. So I can't trust my memory all the time, so I just wanted to make sure that you were asking for what you wanted.
Yep.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Super.
Like one quick question, is it a late menu then that goes till 1? Is it like a short?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
great.
Same,
All right, thank you
same
so
what we
much.
offered last year.
Great,
It's in our packet.
Yeah.
awesome.
Now,
Thank you so much.
would you like a motion on all of them?
Yes,
I don't
please.
have any other questions. Okay, I move
Oh,
that we grant the license.
Jamie has to step, or
Oh,
You
recuse
have to
from
take one out. Yeah, I have to recuse myself from one.
Oh, which one?
A,
one.
just the first one.
Oh,
let's do the
friendly
first one
fisherman. So
first.
Let's do okay, Jamie can
Well, she doesn't
be
have
out
to
of it.
leave.
She can, you don't have to leave. Okay, I move that we approve the common victular license for Little Cod Incorporated, doing business as the Friendly Fisherman.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
301.
No,
An abstention.
no, it's 3-0. The
All
one
right,
means
she's
she abstained,
recused.
she's
You're right,
recused.
sorry. All right.
So now I move that we accept
got
the, that we grant the common victular license for Eastham Ice Cream, doing business as Ben & Jerry's, which I see is now open, and the Whalewalk Inn, and for the common victular and mini golf for Poirtras Enterprise Incorporated, doing business as Poits, for the common victular, all alcohol on premise, and entertainment for C&C Hospitality Group, doing business as Caroline's Bar and Grill, and the Hawker and Peddler license for Good Times Ice Cream Truck.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Just to note, Free Cone Day's April 8th.
I was
Ben &
just
Jerry's.
wondering.
April 8th, is that the
Thank you,
day?
April
I knew I had written it
They're
down.
open,
Big
they're
news.
open.
Big news, yeah. I believe they start at noon to 8.
Just see all the high school kids there.
That's right, that's right.
Oh, I won't be here. We'll be in Morocco.
I was about to be like, yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, we're going to move up a couple things from the bottom here. We have some committee resignations, and Bev Hobbs, the chair of the COA board, is here to talk about one of the resignees, a long-serving person. And then we'll get to it.
Beverly Hobbs, 190 Sparrowhawk Lane in Eastham, and I'm the chair of the Council on Aging Board. And Pat Unish, who is one of the people who is resigning today, has been on the board for over 10 years, and she's just a delightful lady. And she had been attending meetings regularly and actively participating until her health deteriorated recently. And she and her husband were very enthusiastic, regular users of the center, and they loved the educational classes, and they especially loved the all the meals where they could come in and talk with everybody, and really enjoyed all of the community events, so that they made many friends, and they just was such a sweet couple. Pat was very shy, and so it was really nice to see her make friends, and which is really the essence of the Council on Aging, so that people can get out and get to know people. And I just wanted to publicly thank Pat for her 10 years of dedication to the Council on Aging, and let it be known what a lovely person Pat is. That's it.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Bev. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jerry's our letter writer, so he'll make sure
I
to
took
get in touch
notes.
with you.
I'll be in
and
touch, and we'll
reach out
get it.
and send a
Send
lovely
her a nice letter.
to her. All right, so we need a motion to accept the resignation for Patricia Unish, effective, I believe it was February 27th. And I think that was your last meeting. And then also a resignation for Richard Trimble. That's not effective until June 30th.
I move that we accept the resignations of Patricia Unish and Richard Trimble from the Council on Aging.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. All right, we can jump back up now. Pre-town meeting date. A little change.
It's official. I spoke with Scott Carrier, our moderator, today, and we have confirmed Tuesday night, April 22nd, right? That's the
5:30 at Town Hall.
5:30 here
Here.
for pre-town meeting. And usually pre-town meeting, we work with the moderator and we just go through every article. If anyone has any questions, they can ask. That's basically how we do it. There are no really formal presentations, but we do have a back and forth if there's any interest in the articles.
Great opportunity to get your questions answered before town
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's
Right.
nice to be able to speak candidly and, not have that pressure of town meeting.
Yeah, and we moved the meeting because Monday, the 21st is Patriots' Day. So you can enjoy your holiday without having to schlep over to Town Hall.
Is Town Hall closed that day?
Yes.
Town Hall's closed.
Day off? You too.
Are we on the same Monday? My calendar says Easter Monday.
What?
Well, Easter Monday.
Well,
yeah,
it
but
just
it's-
happens to be
be
Easter Monday. It's
Patriots'
also
Day.
Patriots' Day.
It's Patriots' Day in Massachusetts.
Easter's on April 20th.
Red Sox play at
Red Sox play at
11
11 a.m. to Boston
It's
Marathon.
one of those Massachusetts.
Comes through.
Marathon Monday,
One of those deals.
Which I think, anyway.
All right.
My children and you shall hear.
Town meeting time, I'm guessing you're not referring to the book.
Right, I thought that too when I was.
Good
We,
reading.
we are back in the auditorium for town meeting this year, which means that we're back on the first Monday night in May, which is the 5th. So it's a nighttime meeting for the first time in quite 3 years.
3 years, I
4
think.
yeah.
I love the outdoor meetings.
I know, I did too. So we are going to start that meeting, though, at 5:30 PM. Try and start promptly at 5:30. And basically, we are going to try and have some childcare and some snacks. So hopefully,
Great.
we can keep people satisfied until at least 9.
Then after that, who knows?
And after that,
I have it in my calendar from 5:30 to 7:30.
It's 5:30 to 7:30?
2 hours.
Paul
I
better
know,
be
wishful
working on his
thinking on my
zoning
part.
changes.
All right, next we have a HERO Act, and we wanted to talk about that again. We had the information last month about the veterans exemptions and the state allowing doubling of those. But we'd also discussed with doing the RTE this year that having that much extra, do you remember the
overlay.
amount?
It's
Yeah,
100.
so essentially the doubling adds about 32,000 of additional cost. There's also, just to keep you up to speed, the Board of Assessors is recommending the COLA provisions, the
Right.
the inflation increases. But the discussion is with the things that are on the table, including also CPC had also recommended
Yep.
the exemption, low-income exemption on the CPA piece.
Right.
So we're bringing kind of all these things together, and based on some of the conversations we've had, is that maybe a better approach is evaluating the impact of some of these things, and Colleen, our assessor, wants to provide an update as to the various exemptions and abatements that we do have. So we thought maybe a package of reviewing all those together would be appropriate.
Perfect.
Okay. Should we, next week, is that, she doing all that, or is that
No, we were thinking that's something that we'd work on for next
for
year's
next year?
efforts, yeah.
But we should vote on the HERO Act now with the COLA recommendation?
I don't think at this point we were recommending that we approach all these together.
Not even the COLA one?
Right, over the
Okay.
course of the next year.
Okay, and I know we had talked about the CPA exemption. I talked with Mary a bit about it, about waiting till next year. We still plan to do it, just combining it now with the RTE and the overlay and complicating how that probably wouldn't be a pertinent time, so.
All right.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Jamie?
I agree with what you said. I think it's important for people to understand as different things come online, different types of programs, that they understand the impact of each of those and they can really appreciate what each one does. So I do value the ability to kind of give each one its moment. But I do also kind of want to reiterate the fact that this is coming from the state. And so I think Julian actually mentioned it when they were speaking recently, where they talked about how they expect local municipalities to use the tools that we're given. This being one of those tools to help the burden of different residents, whether they be veteran, senior, whatever the category may be. But the state looks to us to make sure we're using these tools. And that is telling to the state to find out, okay, great, these towns are finally using these tools, let's start to develop more. And, you know, like he had mentioned, they're not gonna give more tools if you're not using the ones they're already giving. And so I think it's important as a select board to always be cognizant of what's out there and talking about it, and even if we're not gonna use it in that calendar year, to have it on the calendar for the future, so, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jamie.
Can I follow up?
Sure,
A
Suzanne.
note on what we can and cannot do with taxes is dictated by the state.
Yes.
And we don't really
Get
have an
to-
option to change it in any way. So we get what we get, and we maybe get a little upset, but it's the tool that we're given, and we're not allowed to change it, and it's set by the state. And so that applies to all of these programs, the CPC exemption, the veterans exemption, the RTE, all of those were crafted by the state, and we have to follow them. We can't deviate at the local level to make some
You can
tax-
opt in, but you can't make up your own.
Yeah, we can't just make up our own tax policy.
Exactly. All right. Ballot questions.
Do we have more than one?
Yeah, we have the
Two now.
Del Gizzi property.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a non-binding referendum, right?
and a non-binding
And then
referendum.
there's, the second one relates to Article 4D, which is the taking of 2 condominium units, which is at the base of the hill down here across from Salt Pond, where we own 2 out of 4 condominium units. As it turns out, that's a perfect site because of the elevation drop for a pump station related to wastewater, but also solves a couple other issues that we have. One of the primary ones being, for years, our former health director, Jane Crowley, has been working on a direct discharge of a road runoff from Route 6 direct into Salt Pond. It's very difficult to remediate that situation on the east side of Route 6 because where Salt Pond Landing is a combination of state, local, and federal lands, which it makes it impossible to effectuate.
And it has a very high pitch.
Right. So this site on the west side of Route 6 is also a perfect location, and if we controlled that parcel, then we'd be able to move forward with some plans to remedy direct discharge into Salt Pond. And then finally, it also remedies a problem we have where we are a non-controlling interest in this condominium association, which has prevented us from moving forward with repairs on buildings and moving forward on any projects related to those buildings. So there's really 3 great valid public purpose reasons for the taking. And we have an appraisal of those properties and maybe a small amount of money above that for some planning efforts related to all 3 of those things, or at least 2 of them, the housing and the stormwater. And that would be a borrowing, that's looking at a magnitude of, I put down in the warrant, 1.1 million. It would probably be something less than that, but that would be something we would borrow for. And the ballot question is to make that an exempt debt purchase. And that really just gives us, we have a lot of opportunities to use perhaps short-term rental receipts and not have to execute the need for additional borrowing, or we might still borrow, but we'd use the short-term rental to pay off the proceeds. But this gives us the flexibility in case those are no longer available for some other reason.
You have to have a backup.
Right.
So,
And it's important to have the authority to borrow, so we don't have to pay the full amount in 1
right,
year.
in 1 year, right. So there'll be a warrant article for the taking, and then the ballot question is dealing with just the exempting the borrowing debt.
Right.
And it won't be most likely contingent on the,
It won't be contingent because we could borrow
do it
straight,
other
or we could
ways.
do some other means that may be a little bit more expensive, but we can do other means.
so just to do borrowing, the taking and the borrowing will require 2/3 vote of town meeting.
At town meeting, right.
Does it-
But the exemption is just a majority vote on the ballot question.
Yes.
And it needs to pass both.
No.
No.
It's not, the
This one
vote
isn't.
at the ballot is not, the vote at town meeting will not be contingent on the vote at the ballot.
Okay.
The vote at the ballot gives us more flexibility,
Okay.
but we don't, it's not essential.
Save us some money.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have to vote to put these both on the ballot?
Yes.
We do, okay. So that's one question, and then the other question is a non-binding public advisory question.
Do we have,
Where is that one?
is, 152 of
Page
250.
152.
Yeah, I got
And it has to do with the nuclear power plant
Yeah.
station discharging.
it. Into the air.
Where did
And this
come
is,
from?
you know, so Massachusetts allows some, it allows us to petition an article for town meeting, right? And we have a process for that. And it also has a process for asking to put something on as a ballot question. So it's signatures, the whole, it's a very similar process, but it's always a mystery to me, like what groups choose to do a ballot question and what groups choose to do town meeting warrant articles, because it doesn't matter how town meeting votes. Neither vote is binding, but because we don't have the authority to make these decisions, right? So this group chose this, but this is probably our fourth vote on some version of Pilgrim.
Right, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's.
So no, this is automatically on the ballot because they've got the
Yes.
required signatures?
Well, you have to place it, but
We have
they
to
did
place
have
it,
his
but
signature.
it's,
It qualifies, yeah.
our authority is, we can't say no. We just have to do our administrative authority to put it on,
That's right.
And,
put it on the ballot.
and we don't get to, this is ballot, this is not town meeting, so we won't
Correct.
vote on it.
There's no recommendation.
vote or recommendation.
No. They're just asking to be put on the ballot. And so they will do all the public education, they will do all the advocacy.
Whatever they want.
We just,
It's on there, because we have,
Right.
to. Okay. That's fine.
All right, so we need a motion to place those two ballot questions on the town election ballot.
I move that we place on the town election ballot the
question.
question to exempt the debt to purchase acquiring 2825 and 2845 State Highway, and to place on the ballot the non-binding public advisory question that was concerning Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station, presented by petition.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, on to article review. So, how do we want to do this? Want to just start going down the list and?
I thought we were gonna do just the ones listed on the agenda.
Someone else has the ringies on.
Yeah, but it's not as loud as mine, though.
The only better one I've heard is Nicky Nickerson was here one time, and he had this big, like, London fog coat on, and these horses started whinnying. And Nicky's standing up here frisking himself.
He couldn't find.
He couldn't find it, and so the horses were going, it was.
Good one, I wish I had
I
a
love
horse.
it.
Yeah, it was impressive. It
Well,
was
at
quite a
least,
few years ago. but
thank
it
you,
was-
Nikki. I'm not as embarrassed anymore.
Yeah, he was like, oh my God, he couldn't find it. It was great.
So 4A?
Yeah, we can go over the ones that are listed on the,
I mean, we can do any of them, I just,
let's do those
Yeah.
first, and then if we want to go through and catch up
Right.
some of the other ones.
Before we even do that, let me ask one. Jamie, will you be here at the next meeting?
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, I figured it would be much easier.
to vote at the next.
Okay, so all five of us will be here next meeting?
Correct.
Okay, that
Yep.
changes
I mean, we
what I was
could
going
wait
to say
till-
today. We're
Yeah.
good.
We could wait to vote on them till then,
Yes.
since we'll all be here. We weren't sure who would, because I thought maybe we'd catch Bob up to the other votes if you weren't going to be here, but
Right.
if we're
No,
all
yeah.
going to be
If
here.
everybody's
Yeah,
going to
let's-
be here.
yeah, let's just do it
that.
all.
It's just always hard if it's a 4-0-1 or a 4.
Yeah, I think it's so much better just to have us
Yeah,
all here to vote.
then people will ask questions all the way through the warrant
No,
about
it makes
why
much
did you disagree? Why didn't you vote for it? You know.
Yeah.
At least here, we can discuss it and figure it out.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so let's go through what Rich had listed. Article 4,
Or
other,
financial items.
yeah, other financial items and prudent investment rule.
Yeah, we thought we had to save the budget items for next week after your budget hearing, so
Oh,
this
yeah,
is the
budget hearing.
non-budget related ones. We can talk about the budget ones too if you'd like after the fact, but the prudent investment rule is 4B. And that's a state law provision relating to how we manage our trust funds. It's been an issue for us for a number of years, but finally getting up to speed we want to better manage our trust funds. Right now, they're invested in cash, basically holdings, which has been fine, but on a long-term basis, that leads to losing some purchasing power of the trust. So for those items in our trust funds only, not our general funds, so this would be the Timothy Smith Trust, perhaps some library trusts if the library trustees want to participate. The ability to invest these for a long-term perspective with an investment portfolio following what's called a prudent investor rule, which is kind of the modern way to manage a portfolio as opposed to what we have now for decades now, the legal list of investments issued by the Division of Banks, which has a lot of limitations and results in some concentrations of risks, which is why lots of people haven't done this historically. So just a couple years ago, the state did adopt this provision that if town meeting accepts, we can move forward. And our plan would be to have a investment policy statement adopted probably by a subset of the Finance Committee. We have to flush that out a little bit. To present to a qualified investment advisor firm, of which there are several that do work for multiple towns throughout the Cape and the state, and engage with them to give us some professional investment advice. And that's it.
Cool. Any questions for Rich? We lost Jerry. All right, next, Section 5 Town Bylaws. Is that basically what Paul was talking about?
No, it's seasonal communities.
Oh, seasonal community, sorry.
I'm sorry, no, yeah, it is. 5A is seasonal communities designation. So it's been confirmed that we have been designated as a seasonal community by state statute, but you always have to opt in, so
To accept.
we have to
our-
accept that
the
designation.
Okay.
Yes.
So exciting.
So, and all these, for most of these, at this point, we do have summaries, so in the warrant that you have in your packet, there is a summary to that and what that means and some of the provisions.
Did we want to talk about 6A? Oh, so 6 is coming up, right?
Yeah, that's after this.
Right.
So anybody have any questions on these seasonal communities?
My own, I don't like tiny homes. It's fine.
Will you stop with the tiny home?
It's a great
It's part
starter
of it.
place.
I will
Great starter.
I will still vote and encourage people to vote for it, but
I feel like it goes back to what I was saying, though, that it's, again, the state kind of looking to us to use the tools that they're giving us. This is
Exactly.
a tremendous tool that unlocks many small tools that we can or cannot, that we can opt into, ones that, I think that without a doubt will benefit the town. Nothing's perfect, but it's definitely, I think, a huge plus for Eastham and the Outer Cape. I was very excited about it.
Cool.
Yeah, we can do things, acquire housing for employees, et
Yep.
cetera. I mean, it opens up a lot of
It's a
things
lot of
for us to
Workers,
do.
yeah. Limiting occupancy restrictions and that sort of thing, so.
I will also say that I think it is interesting that the state allows an increase in the RTE.
Yes, it does.
And I just think it's interesting that the state thought it was
Such a good tool.
such a good tool that they,
Well, if you look at the initial legislation.
Initial law, yeah. 1979.
79, it talks specifically about seasonal communities that this is to
In
benefit.
cities.
And cities that have a large apartment
Right, yeah,
level
Boston
of
had a big
apartments.
problem.
And seasonal communities. Those were the two main ones. So,
All right.
all right, next we have special legislation, 6A, the real estate transfer tax fee.
Yeah, well, let me just say first, we did have a 6B previously, which was a RTE for rental properties, essentially year-round rental. So we've dropped that for the moment, kind of on the same premise that we talked about earlier about evaluating all these things for next year. So that leaves us with 6A. And based on the feedback from the board from the last time you discussed this, it's this pretty much the same. I've highlighted in yellow things that I changed based on that feedback, basically for your discussion. We do need to kind of get to some finality on this. If you'd like to have the Finance Committee recommend on a specific worded article, we would have another chance, I think, next week to do that, too. But if I know from tonight the direction you're going, I can get that together for next week.
Now, last time we looked at this, the first cut was the 1% across the board on any value of a sale, for want of a better term. This would be only on the amounts above $1 million. So if I sold a home for $999,999, I wouldn't have anything, but if I sold it for $1 million, I'd have to pay a penny.
It's if you bought, because
If
it's
I
the
bought,
buyer.
excuse me, if I bought.
Yep.
No,
You
well,
have to pay on a dollar.
I mean, you have to pay, yeah, so I'd have to pay on that $1.
That's how it is. And I should have said, I preface this after the meeting, I did go back and review multiple of these local option legislation requests, and they're all a bit different. And so nobody's, there's not entire uniformity across all the different towns that have done something like this. And none of them have passed yet as legislation. They've all been put through committee.
Put through and just sitting up there.
But the, the push, as you heard Senator Sear a couple weeks ago when he was here, was really encouraging us to adopt something to weigh that
Put it in there.
this is something that might be needed on a broader basis, and I thought that this was our opportunity to put in elements that we thought were important to find in an eventual law if that were to happen.
Now, if my memory's right, the initial discussion that was in the budget bill last year that was pulled out was the $1 million, right? This is basically what was before the state and then just got dropped out right at the end last year.
In the housing bond bill,
In
yeah.
the yes.
And it was a higher percentage, I believe. Wasn't
It
it?
was a higher percentage?
Two or
It was
three?
the $1 million with 3%?
Three or?
I think it was a local option you could pick between.
1 and
It was a
3.
range.
Usually they give
Between
us
1 and 3, a local option, okay. Rich, you had given us some numbers last meeting on what it meant with starting from 0 and also starting from a million. Do you have
Do we have
those,
our-
just so I can,
I meant to bring that down, I must have forgot to.
it's
bring
okay,
that
but
down.
if we can,
And Provincetown is recommending like a 0.5% on all.
Yeah, Provincetown's 0.5% on all is their legislation.
so Provincetown's going about 0.5% on all the way up. It might be, at least for me, I don't know for others, looking at what is kind of a few ranges of where it is, because I'm not, and how many sales do we have that are,
If I recall, I
For $1 million.
have all that information and I can get it to you.
I know
If
you
I
do.
recall, as roughly in the $1 million range, I think, on all,
Yeah.
and more like the 250 range, 200 to 250
Okay.
on over $1 million.
it would just be, it would be good information to have as we look at it and decide, and I know you need an answer. And, this is fine, it's what the state had, so they, at least somebody up there on Beacon Hill, I almost said Capitol Hill, wrong city, on Beacon Hill, agreed with it at $1 million. So I think that's kind of a thing in the back of my mind, that maybe this is something that would be more acceptable to them.
Well, the other provision, I'm sorry, but let me just finish. The other provision in here that's highlighted is, I had seen this somewhere, and we had talked about you set this amount now, and 10 years from now, it's not quite the right amount. So we also have in here, the exemption amount may be amended by 2/3 amount of a town meeting. So we could change this in the future to whatever suits the needs of the town.
And I think the point of this is, obviously, our piece of legislation, no matter what you guys decide, it's not going to pass as is. So the whole point is to send the legislature a message that we support some version of this. And obviously, generally, when they pass these things, they have parameters, and then they give us a couple of choices, right? They say, this is it, but you can choose, these implementation things. But- So you don't really have to agonize over it, Jerry, because it's going to change anyway.
Right, I know, I was just thinking what, where it is. It might be nice to know what the numbers are. I'm not too.
No, absolutely.
I'm not too worried about it. I also, my own experience as a seller of a home, moving up here eventually, is that a lot of times the seller has to pick up some closing costs too to try and make the sale.
Not generally on Cape Cod, though.
Okay, no. I don't think so.
I haven't sold on Cape Cod.
Yeah, no.
Just bought.
Exactly.
Yes.
The other thing that's different and unique to this is, I guess it's just my own personal pet peeve about it, so you do with it as you may, but I do have the option here of apportioning your annual receipts at the discretion of the select board from time to time between, we might want to change the language from instead of affordable housing trust, although I think as legislation's changing that will represent workforce.
Yeah, too.
It doesn't matter that it's in the affordable housing trust, it can still be used for housing purposes. But perhaps we could change that to a housing stabilization fund or a wastewater stabilization fund.
And I think the purpose of this is to develop a funding stream specifically for housing. I would love it if we had a
Yes.
funding stream specifically
Yes.
for housing. But I think what Rich is saying is if we make it about two things, then, then you could, the future boards, if housing
There's
was no longer an
flexibility.
issue and they wanted to use it for wastewater or something else, they could.
It's nice to have options.
It is.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
All
Okay.
right.
That's a good idea.
And
Thank you,
then
Rich.
Yeah, we'll have a good talk. Which number you want?
I think that's probably it for,
Basically, yeah.
anyone have any other questions on,
Did we lose a citizen's petition between
It was.
Yes.
it-
time we met?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, the petitioner on that one wanted it to be your article. If it wasn't your article, they didn't want it to be a petitioned article.
Oh,
that
we
was
would
on the
have,
Fertilizer.
for the fertilizer?
oh, we would have needed more time.
And you would have amended it, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it was just a little late.
Yeah, I feel
So-
like we would have needed a couple months to
Right.
talk about that one. Yeah, okay.
But it's in the same, it's the same as the other special legislation. I mean, it's all going to change if it ever gets dealt with on the legislative level anyway. So we could spend a lot of time crafting it and then
Non-binding.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, well, but
Right.
it's still something we would have wanted to.
True, it's just tough with
Review
enforcement
more
and how
than-
you're gonna.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep,
All right,
all right.
anything else on warrant articles right now? All right, committee appointments?
I met with James Bryan. That is not his last name, and I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
Colin Tropo. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that sounds
Does
right.
that sound
Thank
right?
you.
You might run it together more, like.
Yeah.
And
Colin Tropo. Oh, maybe, I don't
he
know.
and his wife moved here in 2020, and they stayed, and they're one of those families that stayed and started their family, so they have a
Very
young,
nice. very
a
nice.
young child. They moved from New York, and they had bought their house in 2017. I don't know if that's too much personal information, but it's
fine.
in my notes. And he has a very interesting background.
Quite extensive.
That I'm always really amazed at the people I meet when I do these interviews,
I know,
because I'm
they're
like,
amazing,
we
right?
don't have these jobs around here. So I won't pretend to try and describe what he does, but he did mention a desire, an understanding of protecting the environment, having a viable community for all ages, and the interconnection between tourism and the environment, and then, you know, trying to have a path for people who want to live here to be here. And he works at a level of whatever he does for work that is beyond me. And so the Strategic Planning Committee is finishing up on their plan, and they're going to move into the next phase of, you know, benchmarking how the plan is being implemented. And I don't think they super know what that looks like at this time, but he seemed to be on board, and I think his skill set will be complementary to figuring out how to help benchmark. And yeah, excited to have him on board.
Yeah, no, it's good to get young people, as is the next appointee. So let's, did you already make a motion?
Oh, I move that.
Well, let me do the second guy, and then we can do them together.
Sure.
So Andrew Shearer, I was in on the interview with him. Committee, so I think they'll be happy to have him.
Wonderful.
All right, go ahead. You do it.
No,
You do it. Go
I
ahead.
move that we approve the committee appointments to the Strategic Planning Committee and Open Space Committee as listed on our agenda.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. All right, town managers report.
So I didn't do a formal report for you, but I promise for next Monday I will. We'll consolidate. But I did want to say I got notice from the seashore that they are paving. So they're doing, I think this paving was approved maybe 5 years ago, but the money finally came through. So they're paving the Doan Rock parking area and the roadway.
Bunch of stuff going on there.
That's going to be closed from today for the next few days, I guess. The Salt Pond Visitor Center parking and roads are also going to start, and it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. So they're saying, obviously paving at this time of year, it's highly weather dependent, temperature and rain.
Hold on, apparently we just lost our connection.
Oh.
Sound, I'm getting text messages that they can see Rich on the screen, but
Oh.
no,
Well, that's good.
we
They
have
can
no
still
sound.
see
Oh,
Rich.
nope, now it's back.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So the seashore is paving Doan Rock, Salt Pond Visitor Center, and Nauset Road Mill and Overlay from Route 6 to McPherson Way.
Right in front of my house.
That's going to be March 24th to the 31st.
Okay.
So that's a little later, but I just wanted people to be advised.
By people, we mean Amy. I said by people, we mean Amy.
We need Amy and everybody else,
Everybody else
because
in the neighborhood.
lots of people do
Yeah.
go down Nauset, right? It's going to,
The high
the
school.
school, yeah.
Right, that's going to be big.
Which
Big
means that
schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse Road is going to be very busy.
Sorry.
Now, So the seashore has Nauset Road from Route 6.
They own parts of,
I know they own part, I thought
They
it was
own
from
it.
Doan. I thought it was Doan, but
That's
okay, they
Doan
own that.
Road.
That's Doan, they own the whole thing.
yeah.
So from the light on Route 6, they own Nauset Road to my house.
Do they own portions of Ocean View
No,
Drive to? No, those are
that's
ours.
town.
No,
They own
no.
cable.
Cable,
Ca-
part
all
of
cable.
cable.
Cable, they own Doan, but town is Ocean and half of Nauset, basically.
Yeah. Fun and games.
It's odd.
On the other side of my driveway is the town. Nobody is claiming the middle.
Right, so.
Thank God.
But Neil was on it when the
So-
water came in. He
so,
got repaved in the front, so.
The Salt Pond Visitor Center is going to be closed for like a week or 2
They
weeks?
didn't say closed. They said partial closure, so I'm assuming they're doing one area at a
Part of
time.
the parking lot and the other, okay.
Yeah, so they're not going to close the visitor center or anything, but, and they didn't start today, obviously, because it's pouring rain.
Yeah.
Yes,
Boy, was it,
supposed to be raining most of
does
the
it rain like that?
Hey,
Wow.
We
It's
need
good.
rain, though.
Absolutely.
We do, it's good.
All right, new and upcoming agenda items. I have one thing, I already talked to Jackie about putting on next Monday, the remote participation that the state had extended and
Yes.
extended and extended through COVID, is due to expire at the end of the month. Apparently, they're in discussions about what to do going
Well, it's
forward.
also part of the new, that
Modernization,
Municipal Empowerment
Empowerment
Act.
Act.
empowerment.
Yeah, it's part of the Municipal Empowerment.
Yeah,
Act.
so it's not clear whether or not they'll have something by the end of the month. So we have a policy that we developed in 2017.
Yeah, if it's not signed by the governor, we have to redo it.
We have to go back to our policy. But our policy only allows for one remote person. Because
Right.
back then
We
we
don't
were on
want
the
that.
phone with them.
So we have to update the policy.
So we need to update our policy. So
So put that on for the next
we'll have
meeting.
that on
Yeah.
the next meeting.
And do you,
President, over my objection when the finance committee.
Right.
I was
do you
screaming.
want the sanctuary city for transgender diversity, you want it on the next meeting?
Yep, that was what I was gonna ask
All
about
right.
that.
Will that include someone looking into the specifics for us?
There, Robin had sent us the Worcester proclamation or
Right,
designation.
So we can look at
I'd
that.
So we can look at that
Yep.
and see what it says.
It almost
was-
feels like it like tags on to the, what we already passed,
It does.
Okay, okay.
so it's basically
I
an
missed.
addendum to that.
We want to hear from Chief Bohannon if that causes any issues, or he's
I don't
fine. I mean,
think
he had
so.
a
I
great
don't-
answer at Finance Committee on.
I mean, the
I
thing
think
that
it's a
passes-
statement of intent. It really, it can't be anything else.
Right, again, it's another
Okay,
kind
I
of
guess
non,
that-
You know, so it's more of the board's statement of support or an intention to keep us a safe place, or Adam is bound by law and his own conscience and duty to protect us and keep us safe, all of us.
which you will.
So, which he will. So, but this is just a special
Okay.
piece for you guys to do. I think.
And this would be on town
Okay,
meeting.
and it'll be on the meeting, all right.
No,
No, it doesn't have to go to town meeting because the
no,
state.
they're asking for you to do it as the select board, like the
Designate.
city councils have been
Kind of
doing.
like we do the
Okay.
Purple Heart designation or
Okay.
other things we designate
Great.
our
So it's
community.
more, yeah, that's a good way to think of it. It's like a designation.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Minutes, there were not any in the folder.
No, no minutes. We're just not going to approve
Guess-
any.
I guess,
All
well, we
right.
only have two, now we'll have three the next meeting, so we'll. All right, any other business?
No, just to make sure, our next meeting is next Monday,
Next Monday.
and that's the joint meeting with the Finance Committee?
No,
No.
No,
it's a
that's
budget
not-
hearing.
Oh,
Oh, it
yeah,
is a-
it is
I'm
the budget
sorry.
hearing, sorry, you're right,
It's a budget hearing with the Finance Committee.
Sorry.
we lost Mary, but
Is that when we're also gonna vote
all the warrant articles.
all the
Yep.
warrant articles? And
It's a
then-
busy
So try to
meeting.
think about, so we can,
Bring snacks.
you know,
It's going to be a big meeting, but, you know, we got to check on April 7th because really we might be able to, because we've done two back-to-back, April 7th, if the warrant's already at the printers, and I don't know what we've got for that meeting, so we may be able to
Drop that
skip a
one.
meeting.
And you won't have,
Right, we want to have the very important people.
exactly.
All right.
almost half the board.
More than half. All right, Jerry,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.